My name is Evelyn Hart, and I'm 58. 10 years ago, I walked into a steel-cold factory at dawn with a notebook, a thermos, and a conviction that competence would be enough. Today, I carried those same three things to the door, inside a box. "We could hire 3 junior engineers for your salary, Evelyn," John Harding said, with a half-smile meant for trader floors and cheap negotiations. His words hit the table like loose screws, rolling toward the edge. I didn't argue. I nodded. The silence that followed was the kind that makes fluorescent lights buzz louder. People I had trained stared into their monitors as if spreadsheets might save them. Tom, the one who used to ask me why tolerances drift at high humidity, glanced up. His mouth opened. Harding clicked his pen. Tom lowered his eyes. This wasn't cost-cutting. This was erasure. I packed my box. The photo that once sat on my desk. Daniel took it on a Sunday, sunlight cutting across my face like a promise. The dented thermos that still smelled faintly of cardamom, the ruler etched Senior Engineer of the year 2019, and my old black notebook, grease-smudged, threadbare, and inconveniently invaluable. "Nothing personal," Harding said. "It never is until it is." I walked out past posters about innovation and teamwork, the kind of words that peel in corners and collect dust nobody budgets for. At the parking lot, I put the box on the passenger seat and sat. For the first time in decades, I had no shift, no queue, no one to keep from quitting at 2 a.m. Only one person knew where the hidden conduit ran between workshop A and B. Only one had the standing with Arcadine to say, "No, physics won't bend for your deadline," and keep the contract anyway. That person had just set the car in drive. No one realized it yet. I didn't plan revenge. I planned to wait. Buildings sometimes collapse when the last load-bearing beam walks out. At home, Daniel spotted the box and stilled. He has the kind of face that makes you think twice about lying to it. "So, you just left?" he asked, clearing a patch of table as if clearing space might also clear the air. "I left," I said. "You didn't tell them where to go." "No." He inhaled, something between sympathy and disappointment. 2 years ago, he'd started saying, I stayed too late, that I was mistaking endurance for meaning. I told him nobody thanks the person who saves a shift handoff. He said, "You don't do it for thanks." We never finished that argument. "What now?" he asked. "Rest, then decide." He nodded. No reproach, no pep talk. Emptiness can echo louder than shouting. After he went to the bedroom, I opened my notebook. Curlicues of pencil dust rose like ghosts. On one page, a draft for Osprey/Arcadane. The miracle delivery we salvaged when 2 junior engineers evaporated at the word accountability. I had gone to the client myself, diagrammed a solution on a paper placemat, and bought the team 6 weeks with a single diagram and a steady voice. Good luck to 3 cheap hires. My phone lit up. Bill, former colleague. "Hey, heard about you. We're in shock. Harding pulled a fast one so you couldn't react. If you need anything." I didn't answer. Not yet. The next morning, the library smelled like paper and forgot 10 ideas. I found formulas for efficiency in mechanical engineering. Exactly where it always waits for the stubborn. I sat, opened, breathed. For the first time in a long time, I thought about myself. Not the line, not the budget, not the person crying in the break room because a censor misread her competence. The phone vibrated. John Harding. I watched it ring. Let him practice waiting. 3 days later, an email arrived. "Hi, Evelyn. We're having difficulties with the Arcadine project. We need your advice. We'll pay. Come in for a little while. It's an offer." Arcadine. The contract I'd fed my Saturdays to for 6 months. I knew every pitfall in the spec, every supplier you must call twice, every power dip that scrambles their fragile software. They were sinking. They knew who could keep them afloat. I closed the laptop and washed last night's cup. The clink sounded like closure. "Did he write?" Daniel asked over dinner. "He did." "Are you going to reply?" "No." Daniel's nod wasn't approval. It was restraint. The kind that hurts because it trusts you to steer. By morning, I called Bill. "Evelyn, I thought you moved into the woods with a radio," he blurted. "Listen, Arcadine's a tire fire. Harding tried to assign it to Tom. No idea where to start. He pulled Karen in. She broke on the first call. Client sent a formal complaint. Harding looked seasick. I let the picture settle, not triumph. Confirmation. "You going to do something?" Bill asked, gentle but needling. I didn't answer. Not yet. A better thing rose instead. I found a business card I'd ignored from a conference, a small, hungry consulting firm. I laid it beside the notebook and opened my laptop. A blank page stared. I wrote at the top line, "What keeps the company afloat, and who actually did?" I listed clients by unglamorous truths, the ones who called after midnight because I would tell them the truth and not make them feel stupid. I listed incomplete drawings I had been promised time to finish. I listed unconventional solutions that never made it into official workflow because they required courage, not consensus. And I wrote what I would demand if I ever walked back into a room with a problem, my terms. I messaged Bill, Friday, old cafe by the office. I'll bring the notebook. He arrived grayer, or maybe just unmasked. We didn't hug. We never did. Blueprint people show love by bringing pens. "You okay?" he asked. "Depends on your calibration," I said. He looked at the notebook like it was a relic. "What's that?" "Answers, or reminders." "You want back in?" "No. I want them to know what they threw out. And when I start something new, I want them to knock on my door because they know I solve problems." Bill leaned in. "Paragon Tech owes me a favor. They don't hire resumes. They hire people who keep systems from eating themselves." I didn't smile. I wrote Paragon Bill Connect in the margin. That night, I typed a note to the consulting contact. "I'm open to talk. Mechanical systems, failure diagnostics, quality control. I show work, not slides. Examples available." Daniel read it before I hit send. "You're going back into the mess?" "I'm going to stop being silent." He nodded, this time with understanding. A new muscle we were building. On Monday, an email landed from a personal account at Arcadine. "Evelyn, we heard you're no longer with Global Edge. Can we talk for 15 minutes? Off the record." I met Thomas Lang in a neutral conference room that smelled of leased furniture and worry. "We didn't know you'd left," he said. "Everything fell apart in a week. The modification failed, no answers, reports don't match. Drawings, they're static. Your diagrams made sense. Now it's noise." "I'm no longer affiliated," I said. "If you need help, I'm open, on my terms." He tensed, then nodded. "What do you want?" "No intermediaries. Separate contract, transparent pay. I choose what I take." We shook hands, not like deal makers, like two people done being handled. Walking out, I looked at my reflection in the glass. I didn't see a casualty. I saw a counterweight. When I got home, Daniel poured tea the way he does when he's careful not to spill boiling water on good news. "This time," he said softly, "you're not doing it for them." "I'm not," I said, and felt the truth ring down my spine. The next day, Bill called again. "Paragon's in. 2-month trial. They want the person who's seen systems fall apart and didn't pretend otherwise." I hung up and opened my notebook to the first page, the one with the conduit sketched between A and B. Pencil lines dark as a road out. I hadn't lit any fires today. I had simply stepped out of the building. Arcadine's conference room had a view of a parking lot and a dying maple. Perfect. I don't do vistas when things are burning. Thomas Lang slid a folder toward me, like it might explode. We mirrored the old line and swapped the controller. It should have been seamless. It wasn't. I flipped pages, listening to the paper talk. Reports don't lie, but they do omit. The maintenance logs were immaculate in all the wrong places. Someone had polished the narrative and left the facts smudged. "Who owns alarms?" I asked. "Formally, integration. In reality, whoever's standing closest when things break." There it was, the unassigned child of every factory. We walked to the floor. The line wore the look of a patient who insists they're fine while quietly bleeding into their shoes. I watched a pallet creep past the scanner. The read lagged by half a second. An eternity, if your conveyor thinks half seconds are holidays. I crouched, counted under my breath, felt the hum through the concrete. 2 beats in the cycle were out of key. We call it disharmony, not drama. But a bad note can bring down a symphony. "Kill the line for 3 minutes," I said. Thomas flinched. "We're behind." "You're already behind. Choose where to be wrong." He keyed in the stop like a confession. Silence fell, thick and reverent. I popped an access panel and looked at the wiring like reading a diary. Someone had piggybacked a sensor to simplify a branch. The signal was clean in the lab, dirty in the wild. The grounding strap dangled like a loose sentence. I sketched the fix with my old pencil. We move the strap, reroute the sensor here, and stop letting your HMI play judge and jury. You're starving your PLC of context and then punishing it for guessing. Thomas watched my hand. "Can we do it without ordering new hardware?" "Mostly. You'll need a shielded run and one controller with a brain that isn't from a museum. Everything else is sweat. We brought the line back up. I stood at the operator station beside a woman whose shoulders carried a week's worth of blame. "What's your name?" I asked. "Karina." "You didn't break it, Karina. Press start." She did. The scanner synced. The signal didn't lag. The rhythm came back like a memory you stop fighting. Thomas exhaled. How did no one see this? They looked where the report told them to. Reports tell you where to look. They never tell you what you'll find. By evening, I had a mitigation plan written in sentences, not slogans. I handed Thomas a single page. This buys you 6 weeks and about 400 grand in saved waste, assuming you don't apply the right fix in the wrong place. He stared at the number as if it might vanish. We'll put you under Global Edge's vendor line. No, I said. Separate contract. My terms. If you want me to own an outcome, I don't borrow someone else's cage. There was a long second where he weighed hierarchy against survival. Survival won. We shook, human to human, no corporate incense. When I left the building, I didn't float. True fixes don't feel like fireworks. They feel like the exact weight of what you just prevented from collapsing. At home, Daniel had a cast iron pan hissing on the stove. He plates like he breathes. Unfussy, precise, quietly proud. How'd it go? He asked, sliding sautéed greens beside the fish. They were listening to the wrong thing, I said. We tuned the line. It listened back. He sat across from me, eyes warm but searching. You're different. How? You don't need them to admit they were wrong in order to be right. The truth stung, but not the bad way. I want my work to stand without their applause. Good. Applause is a sugar high. You used to live on it and hate yourself for it. I smiled into my water glass. Thomas signed an independent contract. Daniel's mouth lifted. There she is. The next morning, I had 3 short sessions with Arcadine's team. I don't teach like a savior. I teach like someone who expects you to stand. We mapped failure paths, killed 2 bad habits, and turned a superstition. Never restart during shift, into a protocol. Restart at these checkpoints with a timer, not a prayer. On day 3, Thomas called from his car. You just saved us a month and a half and almost $400,000, he said, voice flat with relief. What the hell was Global Edge doing? Selling young and cheap, I said, because sometimes you have to answer the question they didn't ask. He laughed, exhausted. Can we pass your contact to 2 partners? Yes, but not with my name tied to Global Edge. I'm on my own. That afternoon, Bill introduced me to Paragon Tech. I expected a panel. I got Elizabeth Sloan, R&D director, hair up, sleeves rolled, no time wasted. I read your resume, she said, dropping into a chair. Brief to the point of insult. Bill filled the gaps. I don't pad, I said. Padding distorts the shape of what's true. Good, she said. We don't need buzzwords. We need someone who can walk into a system that's lying and make it tell the truth. I'm not a magician. I know where systems hide their shame. Her smile was small and real. 2-month engagement. Project basis. We pay for outcomes, not theater. My terms, I said, and slid a printed page across the table. It wasn't long. I choose projects. Parallel private practice allowed. Refusal rights without justification. No exclusivity. Transparent payments. No use of my name to endorse anything I didn't touch. Elizabeth read, then looked up. These are boundaries, not demands. They are the same thing when you've been swallowed before. Agreed, she said, signing. Start Monday. I walked out into cool air that tasted like the first day after a fever breaks. At home, Daniel set down his book and studied my face. There's calm, he said softly, where the tension used to live. I said no to a net, I told him. You said yes to a spine. Word traveled in the quiet ways that matter. A procurement manager's cousin called to ask if I could look at a thermal drift issue on a new line. An old supplier forwarded my number to a small factory whose calibration curve told a sob story. Someone from a trade group asked if I'd speak off record to a committee that had turned into a complaint box. I didn't chase. I answered what fit. By week's end, I had a rhythm. Mornings at Arcadine, afternoons on Paragon's first assignment, an unstable assembly stage for a logistics client with a cheery acronym and a lot of broken belts. Day 1, I drew their real process, not the pretty version. Day 2, we found the bleed, the place where their smart batching introduced dumb delays. Day 3, I demonstrated the fix. Day 4, the room stopped fighting me and started asking questions. Day 5, they took notes. Day 7, their operations director emailed. We'd like to discuss stability beyond this project. Your approach has changed the room. At night, I sat with my notebook and drew boxes I could live inside, not offices, choices. On one page, I wrote, results over revenge. On another, silence is leverage, not surrender. On the 8th day, my inbox chimed with a name that tightened my jaw, Global Edge Legal. The subject line was the kind of beige threat that pretends to be polite. Request to discuss scope of post-employment consultancy activities. Daniel glanced over as I read. You look like you bit a lemon. They'd like a call, I said. Do you owe them one? No, I said, and felt the answer settle in my bones. But I'll take it, on my terms. Before I could schedule, a different email arrived from a domain I didn't recognize. We're Carter and Reed. We don't need a one-time consult. We want an engineering department built from zero. No showcase, just results. If you're interested, you'll have autonomy. Autonomy, the word that tastes like steel and sunrise. I closed the laptop and looked at Daniel, who was rinsing mugs like they were fragile. Someone wants me to build the thing I was punished for building, I said. And will you? He asked. I don't know yet. I want to know if they want what it costs. He nodded. Ask them the price. See if they flinch. I set the Global Edge legal email beside Carter and Reed's invitation in my mind, like two tools you shouldn't confuse. One was a wrench, one was a fuse. The next morning, Paragon's floor manager brought me coffee in a paper cup and said, people keep saying you don't make them feel stupid for not knowing. Weirdly rare. Ignorance is curable, I said, if nobody is punished for admitting it. She grinned. Then you'll like it here. On my way out, my phone rang with an unlisted ID. I almost let it die. Curiosity won. Ms. Hart? A careful voice. I represent Global Edge. We're hearing reports you're consulting on projects that originated under your tenure. We'd like your assurance you won't use proprietary. You have my assurance that what I use is experience, memory, and my own handwritten notes, I said. If you think those are your property, we should put that in front of a judge and let him laugh first. A pause. There's no need for hostility. There's a need for clarity, I said, and ended the call. I stood outside Paragon's glass doors, the city noise layering around me. Trucks braking, a cyclist's bell, a child laughing like a new start. I texted Thomas. Send me your contractor list. I want the names of who stalls and who saves you at 2 a.m. We're going to need the latter. He replied with 3 names and 1 warning. Harding is asking who leaked Evelyn. No one leaked me. I simply stopped patching holes in a ship I hadn't chosen to sail. Back home, I opened my notebook to the first page, the conduit between A and B. I drew a third line, thinner, almost invisible, the way trust travels when you don't announce it. Then the doorbell rang. Daniel looked up. Expecting someone? No. Through the peephole stood a courier in a navy jacket, a thick envelope in his hand. I knew that logo. Everyone in this business does. I signed, shut the door, and weighed the paper in my palm. It felt like an old trick dressed as something new. From them? Daniel asked. From their lawyers, I said. What do you want to do? I slid a butter knife under the flap and smiled, not because I like fights, but because I finally know what I won't give away. Whatever comes next, I said. It happens on my terms. The envelope contained 3 printed pages on letterhead as heavy as stone. Global Edge Legal. Cease all consultancy relating to projects developed during your tenure. Refrain from contact with former clients and personnel. We reserve the right to pursue damages for misuse of intellectual property. Threats dressed as manners. I took a pen and underlined the blank spaces. Blank, because proof was absent. My notes belonged to me. My memory belonged to me. And if they thought otherwise, they could line up behind every broken gearbox I had resurrected without their budget approval. I tossed the envelope onto the kitchen counter. Daniel picked it up, flipped through, then set it down without a word. His silence wasn't indifference. It was confidence. He knew I wasn't afraid anymore. Coffee? He asked. Yes, strong. That morning, I sent the letter to a lawyer Carter and Reed had recommended. Within an hour, he called back. His laugh was dry as desert wind. This isn't a lawsuit, he said. It's theater. Let me draft a polite response that makes them think twice about setting foot in a courtroom. Make it clear, I told him. I don't trade in fog. While Global Edge played intimidation games, Carter and Reed sent a formal invitation, a meeting at a neutral site, a hotel conference room. No logos, no public smiles. The COO, Ryan Campbell, greeted me with a handshake that was firm but not staged. "We know who you are, Evelyn. Not from resumes, from results. We don't want visibility. We want effectiveness. And we heard you don't work on anyone's leash." I met his eyes. "If you're asking me to rebuild what Global Edge broke, understand something. I won't create another machine that chews people and calls it efficiency. If I build, it will be trust first, diagram second. No bureaucracy, no titles, only responsibility." Ryan nodded slowly. "That's exactly why we're here. We'll give you full autonomy. A warehouse, not an office. Build it your way." "Terms?" I asked. He slid a tablet across the table. Contracts stripped of ornament. No exclusivity, flexible budget, decision-making autonomy. I took a day to think. At home, I told Daniel everything. They want me to start from scratch. No cages, just a space, tools, and people I trust. He placed a mug of coffee in front of me. "So what scares you?" "That I'm 58 and about to start over." He smiled, warm but sharp. "No, you're not 58. You're 1. 1 year into living by your own rules. This is your real beginning." The next week, I stood in a warehouse that smelled of brick dust and forgotten labor. Concrete floors, steel beams, skylights patched with grime. Perfect. Jenny, my old procurement specialist, stepped in behind me and grinned. "This place is ugly as sin." "It's real," I said, "and that's all I need." Within 2 weeks, I had 8 people. 5 former colleagues who remembered not just the projects, but the nights we stayed past midnight because we believed in the work. 3 newcomers vetted through trust, not resumes. Nate, a senior tech with grease under his fingernails and fire in his eyes, inspected every bolt in the space before agreeing to stay. We took on Carter and Reed's first project, reconfiguring their packaging line. The system was a patchwork of old controllers and half-fixes. 3 nights without sleep, until the key weakness revealed itself, an ancient controller running on unstable code. We replaced it, rewired the system, and productivity leapt by 26%. Carter and Reed sent a fat check. More importantly, they sent another job. The warehouse lit up with new energy. People laughed again, but quietly, like laughter they weren't used to. That night, an investor named Rick Manners arrived in a black suit. His smile was polished enough to cut glass. "My partners and I have followed your story. We want to scale this. More equipment, more warehouses, maybe expand to the East Coast. We'll fund everything." I asked the only question that mattered. "Do you touch management?" He shook his head. "We only want results. You produce them, we multiply them." His offer sat like bait. I thought of Global Edge, of how growth had been their excuse to gut everything human. That evening, I told Daniel. He listened carefully, then said, "If you take money just to grow, you'll lose everything you built with your hands. Expansion is easy, integrity isn't." That night, I opened my old notebook. On the first page, under "What Keeps the Company Afloat," I wrote a new line. "Don't sell what you built with your heart, even at a good price." The next morning, I sent Manners a simple note. "Thanks, but no. We'll grow when we're ready. Not yet." No reply. I hadn't expected one. Global Edge's silence ended in the ugliest way. An anonymous article in a trade journal. A former employee accused me of poaching clients and writing old connections. No names, no company mentioned, but between the lines, it was me. This time I didn't stay quiet. I called the editor. "If you publish anonymous fog, you should also publish light. Come to the warehouse. See what we're actually doing." She spent 12 hours with us. From dawn until we shared soup on upturned crates at night. She spoke to Jenny, to Nate, even to Daniel. A week later, the article ran, "When Honest Work Conquers Fear, the story of Evelyn Hart, who left and built differently." We didn't advertise it. But after it went live, 27 emails filled my inbox, 14 from clients who had once been tied to Global Edge, 1 from someone I never expected, Tom. "Evelyn, I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you that day. I kept my head down. I shouldn't have. If you're building something new, I'd like to make it right." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Forgiveness is heavy, sometimes heavier than rage. I closed my eyes, saw the day Harding clicked his pen to silence Tom, and I realized even silence can come back around. We weren't a company, not yet. We were something rarer, a cause. At the next morning meeting, I looked at the team circled around mismatched chairs and laptops balanced on crates. We're growing, but growth can kill us if we let it turn into Global Edge 2.0. So here's the rule. No titles, only responsibility. If you see someone struggling, help. If someone's excelling, step aside. We're not building careers, we're solving problems. Nate raised a hand. What if pressure comes? Clients, threats, the old company. I smiled. If a client leaves because someone threatened them, they were never our client. We won't live in fear. In the silence that followed, I felt something settle, not bravado, not rebellion, a foundation. And for the first time, I believed this wasn't survival anymore. It was life, built my way. The warehouse became our cathedral of stubbornness. No glass walls, no mission statements in frames. Just cables, coffee rings, and a team that believed in work louder than words. Within 3 months, Carter and Reed asked us to expand our contract. 3 of their warehouses, not 1. It meant doubling our workload overnight. It also meant testing if we were real or just lucky. The first week felt like déjà vu. Old ghosts of exhaustion crept back. I stayed until 2 a.m., drawings spread across the table, lines blurring under fluorescent lights. Daniel walked in, barefoot, a mug in his hand. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "are you doing it again?" "Doing what?" "Pretending you're the only pillar holding this roof." "It's my project. If it collapses, then it collapses on you because you wouldn't let anyone else carry the weight. You're not alone anymore. Stop acting like you are." His words stung because they were true. Leadership wasn't martyrdom, it was trust. The next morning, I gathered the team. Starting today, I'm stepping back from execution. I'll mentor, guide, but not micromanage. If you succeed, it's your win. If you stumble, it's your lesson. Either way, I trust you. The silence that followed wasn't resistance, it was surprise. Then Nate grinned. "So now we're not just working for you, we're working with you." Meanwhile, Global Edge sharpened its knives. Harding had grown pale, Bill told me over the phone. Their Arcadine fiasco had cost them more than money. It had cost them face. And Harding hated nothing more than humiliation he couldn't control. A week later, an article appeared in a trade magazine. A certain former engineer accused of exploiting past relationships to steal clients. No names, but anyone who could read between the lines saw me. This time I didn't duck. I called the editor. "If you're running ghost stories, you should balance them with facts. Spend a day here. See what's real." She came. 12 hours, shadowing us. Watching Jenny wrangle suppliers, Nate climb scaffolding to check faulty wiring, Daniel reworking schedules with a precision you could mistake for art. She ate lunch with us on crates, soup ladled from a dented pot. Her article ran the next week. When honest work replaces fear. Inside Evelyn Hart's workshop. We didn't repost it. We didn't hire PR. But overnight, my inbox exploded. 27 emails. 14 from clients ready to defect from Global Edge, and 1 from Tom. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. I sat there that day and said nothing. I've thought about it every night. If you're building something real, I want to be part of it. Not for a paycheck, to make it right." I read it 3 times. Rage would have been easier. Forgiveness, though, that was heavier. One evening, Daniel looked up from his laptop and said, "You need someone to keep the system running. You can't keep all of it in your head." "You volunteering?" I asked. "I already am," he said with a wry smile. "I schedule, I field calls, I put food in your trunk. Make it official." I thought of all the invisible threads he'd been weaving behind me. He wasn't asking for a role. He already had one. "Operations manager," I said. "No titles, remember?" "Then just call me Daniel," he replied. By the next week, the chaos had shape. Deliveries lined up, deadlines met. Nate said it best. Now we're like an engine. Quiet, steady, revving without noise. But Harding wasn't finished. An envelope arrived, thick with legalese. Breach of agreement. Poaching of personnel. Unauthorized use of internal knowledge. All accusations. No proof. I slid it across to our lawyer, who barely glanced before chuckling. "They're bluffing. They want you rattled. But these pages are as empty as their promises." I nodded. I wasn't rattled, just tired of recycled tricks. That evening, I walked the warehouse floor. Leslie was checking specs. Nate was inspecting a shipment. Jenny was arguing cheerfully with a supplier over the phone. They weren't working for me. They were working for us. And that was my defense. Not lawyers, not countersuits. Us. A week later, Arcadine called. Thomas's voice was different now. Confident, but with an undercurrent of worry. "We know Harding's after you, but we want more. Not just consultation, a full-scale contract. 3 branches at once." I looked at my people, busy at their stations. Jenny noticed my expression and raised a brow. That's going to double us overnight, I muttered. That's why we're asking you, Thomas replied. I hung up and gathered the team. Arkadine wants us to take on 3 branches. This is big. If anyone's unsure, speak now. I need commitment. No one left, but Nate walked up after. Evelyn, we can do this. But if you try to carry all of it again, we'll lose more than the job. We'll lose you. His words landed like a steel in my chest. He wasn't challenging me. He was protecting me. That night, I came home past midnight. Daniel was in the workshop, of all places, tinkering with an old model engine I'd abandoned years ago. Do you remember this? He asked. I nodded. It was under a rag in the garage. I thought maybe you'd come back to it one day. Until then, I'll keep it from gathering dust. It wasn't just a gesture. It was a message. He wasn't waiting for me to return to who I was. He was helping me become who I was meant to be. And for the first time since I'd carried that box out of Global Edge, I believed we weren't just surviving. We were building without anyone's permission. Taking on 3 Arkadine branches was like agreeing to juggle fire in a hurricane. On paper, the contract was a triumph. In practice, it was a countdown clock strapped to our backs. Week 1, 1 supplier, delayed parts. At another branch, 2 engineers clashed so loudly, Leslie had to drive out herself to mediate. Meanwhile, I found myself slipping back into old habits, spending nights hunched over drawings, every problem magnetized toward me. At 2:00 a.m., Daniel caught me at the table, eyes ringed with fatigue, sketches scattered like confessions. You're doing it again, he said, voice calm but edged. It's my project. If something fails, then it fails because you won't let anyone else own it. Evelyn, you built this team so you wouldn't be alone. Stop acting like solitude is the price of excellence. His words weren't soft. They cut and healed. The next morning, I called a meeting. Everyone gathered around the battered table that had become our war council. From today, I said, I'm not taking on execution. I'll mentor, I'll guide, but I will not rob you of responsibility. If you stumble, you learn. If you succeed, it's your victory. This isn't my project anymore. It's ours. Silence, thick and uncertain. Then Nate smirked. So now we're not working for you. We're working with you. Laughter broke the tension. For the first time, I felt leadership wasn't martyrdom, it was trust. Harding must have smelled the shift, because that week a smear piece landed in a glossy trade journal. An anonymous source claimed a certain former engineer was exploiting old connections, poaching clients. No names, but anyone in the industry could read between the lines. This time I didn't retreat. I called the editor. If you run shadows, you need light. Spend a day with us. I'll show you the truth. And she came. 12 hours. No filter. She watched Jenny negotiate a supplier delay with a mix of steel and humor. She followed Nate into a crawl space where wiring had been patched since the Reagan era. She sat beside Daniel as he rerouted schedules with the calm of a man who sees 5 moves ahead. At lunch, she ate soup with us from dented thermoses. A week later, the article appeared. When honest work conquers fear, inside Evelyn Hart's workshop. We didn't promote it. We didn't need to. The truth spoke. That night, my inbox flooded. 27 emails, 14 from clients ready to leave Global Edge, 1 from a name that froze me. Tom. Evelyn, I'm sorry. That day when Harding fired you, I sat there in silence. I've thought about it ever since. If you're building something real, I want to be part of it. Not for a paycheck, to make it right. Forgiveness is heavier than anger. I read the message 3 times before I could breathe. Harding had silenced him once with a pen click. But silence doesn't last forever. The next morning, during our planning session, Jenny raised a hand. If Global Edge pressures us through clients, what then? Then they were never our clients, I said. We don't trade in fear. If they leave because of threats, let them go. Nate grinned. That's not a strategy, Evelyn. That's a declaration. Exactly, I replied. That evening, Daniel walked in with a worn folder. You need someone to keep the system running. You can't keep living with everything balanced on scraps of paper. You mean an operations manager? I teased. I mean me. I'm already doing it. Make it official. I looked at him, this man who had kept me from breaking while I rebuilt my world. Then it's official. From that day, everything shifted. Deliveries arrived when they were supposed to. Deadlines lined up. The chaos found rhythm. Nate described it best. We're like an engine now. No wasted motion. Just torque. But Harding wasn't done. A thick envelope landed. Legal threats. Breach of contract. Poaching staff. Misuse of information. I gave it to our lawyer, who skimmed it with a chuckle. This isn't law. This is bluff. We'll reply, and then they'll back down. They don't want to judge to see how weak this is. For once, I wasn't angry. I was bored. Harding was still playing the only game he knew. We had already moved on. And then Arkadine called. Thomas's voice carried both hope and fear. We know Harding's after you, but we want more. Not just consultation, a long-term contract, 3 branches at once. I gathered the team that evening. Mismatched chairs, mismatched mugs, but a united circle. This is big, I said. If anyone doubts, speak now. I need commitment. No one moved. Afterwards, Nate pulled me aside. We can do this, but if you burn yourself again, we'll lose more than the job. We'll lose you. Don't make us watch that. I swallowed hard. Leadership, I realized, wasn't about how much I could bear. It was about whether I trusted anyone else enough to carry it with me. That night, I came home past midnight to find Daniel in the workshop, tinkering with an old engine model I'd built decades ago. Do you remember this? He asked. It was buried under a rag, I said softly. I thought maybe you'd come back to it. Until then, I'll keep it from gathering dust. It wasn't just a memory, it was a promise. He wasn't waiting for me to go back. He was helping me move forward. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running from collapse. I felt like I was running toward something. Arkadine's triple branch contract pushed us to the edge, but it also pushed us into clarity. We weren't just a scrappy crew in a warehouse anymore. We were a team people trusted with millions of dollars and the survival of their companies. 2 weeks into the rollout, the cracks showed. One site's contractor delayed a crucial delivery. Another had engineers feuding so badly that Leslie drove 3 hours in the rain to calm the fire. I felt the weight I thought I'd shed return, pressing between my shoulders. One night, at 2 a.m., I was bent over diagrams when Daniel leaned against the doorway. Evelyn, are you alone again? The question landed harder than any accusation. I closed my notebook and exhaled. Not anymore, I admitted. The next morning, I gathered everyone. I won't micromanage, I told them. This isn't my project alone. It's ours. Mistakes, victories, all of it. I trust you. The silence that followed was thick but not fearful. Nate finally said, Then we're a real team now, not a ghost of Global Edge. The industry noticed. Global Edge planted another smear, whispering to trade journals that I was poaching clients. Instead of retreating, I invited a journalist inside. She spent a full day with us, watching Jenny wrangle suppliers, Nate crawling through scaffolding, Daniel mapping schedules like a chessboard. She ate soup with us on upturned crates. Her piece ran a week later. When honest work replaces fear, the workshop of Evelyn Hart. Clients poured in. My inbox bloomed with inquiries. Among them was a name I never expected, Tom. Evelyn, I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. If you're building something real, I want to help, not for money, to make it right. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. Anger would have been easier. Forgiveness, though, felt heavier and more human. A year passed, not loudly, not like in movies, one steady cog at a time. The team grew to 19. We opened a second warehouse closer to northern clients, with Nate coordinating operations there. Leslie handled internal systems. Daniel kept the engine humming, not with titles, but with trust. One April morning, a letter arrived from Arkadine. Let's build an entire production facility with only you. I didn't leap with joy. I walked into the workshop where Daniel was tinkering with that old model engine. They want us to launch a whole line, I said. He looked at me. Do you want it? I don't know what I want. I just know what I don't. I don't want to live in fear that everything will collapse again. He put his hand on my shoulder. It won't. Not this time, because you're not alone. That night, we gathered around one long table. No PowerPoints, no staged applause. Just food, mugs, and the hum of people who believed in each other. I raised my cup. Ensemble. I used to think justice was something someone gave you. Now I know it's something you build with your own hands. Every one of you at this table is the reason we didn't just survive. We started living. I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I know who I want to face it with. Thank you. Afterward, Tom pulled me aside. Will you ever call Harding to close the chapter? I smiled, slow and certain. It's already closed. He just hasn't realized it. Later, when the warehouse emptied and night air flowed in, I stood at the open door. The smell of metal and coffee lingered. From inside, the sound of my people working, not for reports, not for appearances, but because it mattered. My phone buzzed, a message from Tom. If you ever open a third warehouse, I'm ready. I smiled, not because I knew what I would do, but because for the first time I had a choice. Not survival, not revenge. Freedom.